Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me for this segment, we have Ryan McCormack, Factor and Core Equity Strategist at Invesco, to discuss weekly performance in the Nasdaq-100 as well as that key CPI data that we got out this morning. Ryan, it's great to see you as always. Welcome back to Trade Talks. And what were some of the key themes that you've been following over the past week in the Nasdaq-100?
Yeah, thanks, Jill. So as we look at the last week, we saw QQQ and QQQM down 1.4%, and that underperformed the S&P 500 index, which was down 75 basis points, and the S&P 500 value index, which was up 8 basis points, as weakness in technology and relative strength in financials weighed on performance against value specifically and the broader S&P. Year-to-date performance still heavily in the Q's favor, with QQQM and QQQ up 40.47% and 40.37% respectively. That's against the S&P 500 up just over 17.5% and S&P 500 value up 12.25%.
Let's talk about the CPI data that came out this morning. The markets kind of took it in stride, relatively muted reaction. And some of the year-over-year data, I mean, headline ticked up a bit, core continues to slow. And it really seems to be that those same categories, cars, services, housing, that's what is propping it up still at this point year-over-year.
Yeah, so the August CPI, we saw the headline year-over-year number increase for the second consecutive month. It went up to 3.7%, up from 3.2% in July. Reading slightly higher than I think what most economists were expecting at about 3.6%. On a year-over-year basis, we saw energy services prices fall, but something to be mindful of is the month-over-month increase of over 10%. Services prices were led by shelter and transportation services prices, each up over 7% year over year. And I think that continues to exert upward pressure on the reading and kind of underscoring the stickiness that we've seen in the core CPI level, which sits at 4.3% year over year. But to your point, all in all, I think today's reading was described as middle of the road, right? Not really providing a ton of compelling evidence positively or negatively for prices. And then, of course, subsequent FOMC action. But I do think it's worth noting that we've seen yields move higher in the past few weeks, and from a Fed funds futures perspective, very different expectations for future activity from a month ago. So as we look a month ago on August 13th, 11% expected a hike in September and 25% expecting a hike in November. As of today, the September expectation for a hike has dropped to around 2%, but the chances for a November hike have ballooned up to almost 40%. So something to just keep an eye on. And then tomorrow, we're going to get another check-in on prices with the August Producer Price Index scheduled to be released. We'll also see how the consumer is faring with the release of advanced retail sales for August.
All right, and Ryan, to wrap up here, what about sector performance?
So we saw 6 of 10 sectors finishing in positive territory for the week within QQQ, but ultimately it was just a challenging week for technology. Big story was around Apple products after reports that China is banning the use of iPhones within the government, and that is going to expand to agencies as well as state-owned enterprises. Beijing has pointed to security concerns as the reason for it, and this comes around yesterday's Apple event where the company introduced the newest iPhone, the 15 and 4 different models of the device, along with Apple watches. Kind of a muted response from the street. Additionally, we saw Oracle shares drop 13.5% yesterday after the company announced slowing cloud revenue and forward guidance that missed analyst expectations. Now, that company is listed on the New York Stock Exchange and therefore not in the Nasdaq 100, so that kind of actually helped QQQ relative performance, although the spillover effects were felt by other cloud computing companies, and we saw Microsoft and Amazon each down lower for over 1% for yesterday's session.
All right, Ryan, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.